Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, Luann Nigara. Luann has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. Luann brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Lane McNab from Lane McNab Interiors is with me today. Lane, just like Darla Powell, who was in last week's show on Wednesday, comes to interior design as a second career. Lane grew up in Florida, attended school in Tennessee and San Francisco, with more schooling at Oxford University and Il Globo Institute in Italy. Lane brings a vast experience to her interior design career. Today, she'll tell us how her career path and the lessons that she has learned along the way contribute to her success as a designer and as a business person. Her work and her expertise has been featured in numerous places, including The Today Show, the East Bay AIA Tour of Homes, Dwell, Modern Sanctuary, Lux Pad, 24 East, My Domain, and a feature in her hometown publication, Berkeleyside, as the go-to interior designer for approachable ways to modernize an historical home. So hang on while I tell you a little bit about My Doma Studio, and then I will be right back to introduce you to Lane. My great thanks to My Doma Studio, our podcast sponsor. What is My Doma Studio? Well, you know, as busy interior designers, that running your own design firm isn't just about designing. That's what we talk about here all the time, right? There's managing contracts, clients, payments, products, and a million other things that you have to have locked down. It is challenging, but you must run your firm efficiently so you can do the fun, creative things you enjoy so much. And that's where My Doma Studio comes in. I'd like to invite you to try My Doma Studio today. Go to mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business. Designers around the world are using My Doma Studio. What about you? Let My Doma Studio help you organize the business side and spend more time on the designing side of your firm. I'd also like to share with you that Vin, Bill, and myself are so impressed with My Doma Studio that we have invested in this company. So see for yourself what My Doma Studio can do for your interior design business. And if you visit using the link mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business, you will receive a special offer just for you as listeners of the podcast. Hi, Lane. Thank you so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. Thanks for having me.
I am delighted to have you because you were referred to me by my good buddy, Krista Cooper. So everybody knows. Yes, everybody knows I have a soft spot for Krista. She is just so brilliant. I can't even stand it. So you are working with Krista on, her firm is helping you with PR and things like that. And so she referred you to me, and I'm glad that she did, because not only when they reached out and mentioned it, of course, that then like I do what I always do. I go to your website and look you up and everything. But in addition to liking everything that I learned, I'm liking getting to know you. Our conversation off air before the interview started. So this is going to be interesting because there's a lot of things going on in your life there, Lane.
That's true.
So we just had an episode recently where Darla Powell was on, and we were very surprised at her first career, which was as a sergeant in the police force at Miami-Dade. And yours isn't quite so dangerous, but it is as exotic. You were an opera singer and a solo opera singer. It's in San Francisco. And that's like no small potatoes. It's not like opera singer at Mayberry RFD here, is it?
That's true. Yeah. Spent several years as a solo performer in the San Francisco Bay Area, and loved the career. It was very rewarding and kind of on a really good trajectory. And then, as happens with a lot of people, started a family and things took a left turn.
And those little babies, they just need you, don't they?
They do. And I think it's impossible to know until they're right there what it's going to be like.
Right. It's all like, I got this. I could do this. It's like,
sure,
maybe
yeah.
I can't.
That's what I thought. So
Right. I don't know. I don't know how old you are, Lane. I don't know if you're old enough to know that darn commercial. It was from the 70s. It's like, bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and let you know you're a man. All this nonsense.
There's so many things wrong with that, Luann.
It's so true.
I don't know where to begin.
I know. And the thing is, I was a kid, when that commercial would come on, and I'm a kid in the 70s, so I'm like of the generation of like, we got this, like just like that commercial. And even I was like, come on, if I'm going out to work like that, I'm not cooking the bacon. Forget about it.
That's true. I have given up the cooking part.
It's the first thing off the list, next out of the lane.
Yeah. I have this phrase in my head, and I don't think it's an accurate description really, but I call it triage. And I feel like when I really got going with the business, I just decided, okay, family is on triage right now, and I am cutting out all the unnecessary stuff that I do.
That's right.
And cooking was first on the list.
That's right. That's right. It's funny in our house because we moved into a townhouse. We downsized to a townhouse like 4 years ago. And look, when my kids were in the house, I cooked. I was like everybody else. You have people in the house, you have to feed them, whatever.
Yeah.
But once all the kids are gone, and they've been gone for quite a while, it's like 8 or 9 years now. When we went to move into this townhouse, and of course we gutted the kitchen, and my husband is looking at me because I am literally with my contractor for days trying to figure out how to fit in this integrated kitchen refrigerator that I wanted, 2 ovens, and this cooktop with the pantry in a townhouse kitchen. And he's just like, and he keeps saying to me, what the heck do you need 2 ovens for?
Right.
You don't cook. But I explained to him, but when I do, I cook for 20 people. That's it. I'm only going to cook 3 times a year, but when I do, it's for a minimum of 20 people. I said, and you can't get it done with 1 oven and 20 people.
Right. And I should actually clarify that I do still cook, but I don't hold myself to the standard I did before.
Right. It's just
so I
different.
I make the meals and all of that. And I also, luckily, I have a pretty supportive spouse who, when things got really busy for me, he took on easily half of the, I don't know, maybe even more. I mean, he does all the grocery shopping, all the dishes.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to send Vinny over there for a couple of weeks of boot camp training.
Well, I did it for a long time. So.
So anyway, okay. So let's talk about this. So you had this career as a soloist in an opera, and then you go home and you have your babies, and you're there for a little while, and then I understand, because I'm going to just get everybody up to speed. So you were doing renovation projects in your own home, and you were working with a particular contractor, and you two had developed a pretty good relationship, and then this is where the germ of your business starts. So take us from that. Take us from what it was like when you were first starting out. It wasn't quite, a full-on business. Give us a little of that background and transition us into Lane McNab Interiors.
Sure. Well, going pretty far back, I would say 2004 was when I first started working with this contractor on my own projects. And my husband and I were lucky enough to kind of stumble into the real estate market in San Francisco at that time. And we actually, no, it was before that we bought in San Francisco. But then we moved to the East Bay, and it was there that I started working with this contractor. And we just started renovating our own projects. And I did grow up around design. I had architects in my family and contractors and all of that. But this was a real school for me. So we started renovating our own houses. We renovated 2 and just worked very closely with this contractor. And I would pester her on my own projects. I would just pester her all the time. Like, what does this mean? What's a P-trap? What's a flange? What's, how does that plumbing work in the wall? I don't get that, and that's kind of my personality anyway, but I just was fascinated by it. And so I just loved it. And I mean, probably like every interior designer, I just had always loved interior design and, just thought of it as an amazing, fun hobby. and I also had this other career that was really my focus and my goal. And so then having kids definitely sort of changed the way I was able to manage my singing career. I, as it slowly became apparent to me that I was no longer on an upward trajectory, I was definitely kind of at a plateau, if not less than that. I was not really doing solo work anymore. The hours were not compatible with what I needed to do for my children, and eventually I was not doing any solo work. I was singing in the San Francisco Opera Chorus, which not anything to sneeze at. I mean, I have so many former colleagues in the opera chorus, and it is a union chorus. It's one of only 2 union choruses in the country, and it is, I mean, thousands of people from all over the world audition for it. So nothing to sneeze at,
right?
But it was not what it wasn't as rewarding.
It's like going from the Yankees to AA or AAA league. It's just different. There's hundreds of thousands of people that aspire to get to it, but you had gone beyond that. So that's human nature. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just wasn't my goal. I mean, I also taught for a little while. I taught at USF. I taught voice for a little while. I don't like it. I mean,
you're a soloist. That's what you are, right?
So yeah, and so it just wasn't.
Give me a stage. I'm ready.
Yeah. So I just, I kind of had to rethink things, and I had tangentially been doing all of this construction and design, and I had started a blog, and I had a pretty good following on the blog that was all interior design. It was, and I was singing, and people used to tease me in the opera chorus because I'd have my interior design books open inside my music scores while we were rehearsing. And at some point I just realized,
what am I doing here? I'm more interested in this.
Yeah. And when my 3rd child was born, I just said, okay, I just need to take a break from the opera chorus too. So I stopped doing that. For 2 years, I was a stay-at-home mom, but also part-time designing. So I was working not on my own projects with this contractor, but I was pulling clients to this contractor and managing the projects for her because I had pulled in the clients. And so I was designing the projects, and we did kitchens. I remember doing my first couple of kitchens with her and just being like, oh, I got to really figure out what I'm doing. And I had already done my own kitchen, and
different on somebody else's dollar though, right?
Very different. Yeah. Absolutely. And I had always been a self, I just read books all the time. And this was really kind of before I thought about Googling things. I would just go out and buy design books and read them, and read about, not even design books like the fun ones where you're flipping through beautiful pictures, but the nitty gritty ones,
technical
about
ones.
Yeah, how do you measure for cabinetry and that kind of thing. So
wow.
That was really my education.
Interesting.
And then I did a couple of projects in that 2010, 2012 era that started getting some attention. And I did one that actually the Today Show called me and wanted to include it in an article they were running. And that was just like, I still didn't even really know that I wanted to have a business. So that was great. And that project still, I mean, I don't even know how many tens of thousands of House people have penned it and used it, and Pinterest. That was a huge one. And then my own house got some attention. And I actually even had a field editor contact me about some images. I guess she saw them on the blog for my house. And she asked for some more pictures. And at that point, I just realized, like, okay, I'm going to sort of look back and say, like, why didn't I take advantage of all of those opportunities?
Yeah, why didn't I turn that into a business and organize it, right?
Get in front of this thing and start doing it. So
yes.
I actually did shut down the blog and took a year to sort of really stay focused, and hired some consultants. I worked very closely with Julia Malloy.
Somebody else on the show mentioned her too a while back. I don't remember who it was, but there was another guest on the show that hired Julia Malloy. And that guest is probably listening right now going, it was me, Luann, it was me.
You can include it in the show notes.
Right?
Actually, help you. Yeah, she was great because she has a program, I think it's called the VIP program, where, I mean, just because I had no real idea, I knew about construction at that point, and I knew how to, where things should go in a kitchen and all that, but I didn't know how to really run an interior design business. And she got me set up, and she had these weekly calls where other interior designers who were also on the program, we all called in and had like a Skype meeting for an hour, and we just talked about whatever we needed to know, whatever we needed help with. And that was great. And I think one of the biggest things was getting set up with my software, because that made a huge difference and just leveled up my professionalism, as well as just kept me from just continuing to fill out Excel spreadsheets and things like that.
Right.
So that was very helpful. And then she also said, you just have to hire someone. You just have to. Someone.
You know what I'm thinking of? I'm going to go out on a limb because I have no way to verify it while we're on air, but I think it was Lynn K. Leonidas, and she's in the San Francisco area too. I think she hired Julia Malloy, and if I'm right about that, she also came right out the gate and like within a year was like had projects and was busy and had her business up and running. And I really want to say it was her. So I think I got to call this Julia Malloy. What do you guys think?
Great. She'd be great.
I mean, so that's a pretty significant thing there. I just want to go back to a couple of things that you said in all of that discussion there. One thing that you said was that when you were in the beginning, even when you were doing the projects for your own home, that you were always, I think you might have used the word pestering, but you were always questioning the different trades about like, what is that PT ring or something you said, and what is this and what is that?
Right.
And I don't know if anybody listening remembers, but Chris Kofitis is a architect, builder, and designer, and he was on the program, and I asked him, because he does all three, so he does everything for a project. But I said, sometimes contractors aren't so, don't play so nice in the sandbox with designers, and they sort of, marginalize them or sort of, keep them out of a loop, and then everybody's standing there when there's a problem and nobody wants to say it was their fault, but it sort of originates if the designer is kept out of the loop. And I asked him for his advice on how designers could more successfully work with not only contractors, but just create a level of more respect so that the contractor doesn't attempt to marginalize them. And that was one of the things he said. He goes, if you walk into one of your projects and the plumber is on the project and he's sitting there and he's putting the rough in for the bathroom, ask him what the pieces are. Ask him, why does it go like this? And he said, and it's just what you did. And he said, because then what happens is, the vendor that you're working with, everybody likes to feel like you care about what they're doing, right? So that vendor feels like, oh, she's actually interested, or he's interested in what I'm doing, number one. But number two, that knowledge. So the next time when you're working on a project, you can talk to the next plumber with some level of expertise, and maybe you avoid a problem because you've learned something that you now know what to look for, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's pretty cool that you did that. And then I also just think it's interesting that once you decided to make it a business, sometimes people, Lane, they open their business, and then 3, 4, 5 years later, when it's not productive and it's not profitable, then they go and say, let me find a consultant, let me find a business coach, let me find a mentor. And of course, at least then find it too. But I think it's very interesting. Almost every designer that I've spoken to that has hired one from the beginning usually says things like you just said, like completely saved me from doing things completely long way on in Excel and set up systems for me and, all this other stuff. And so it speaks to no matter how smart you are, because I can tell that you're a smart lady. I mean, if you sit there and you're bringing business to a contractor and she's like, hey, you run the project, so obviously you've got something going on. She's not like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Right. But you still recognize that somebody else can teach you how to do something and you don't have to invent the wheel on the system, right?
Yes. That's true. And I think also I have a pretty, well, I have this other thing. I know I said I have these little things in my head that I have this other thing I do all the time, which is pretty much everything. I'm constantly running a cost benefit analysis, and it's not financial. It's my energy and emotional investment and time. So if I look at something and I think, sure, I could do it the hard way and invest all this time and but for me, the payoff is not worth it. The payoff is better if I get someone who already knows what they're doing in here, even if I'm forking over some money from the business.
It's like
if I
hiring somebody to clean or cook the house. It's like, I can do it, but I can make more money designing something than going to the grocery store, right? It's like when you offload the projects and the things, and it's so what you're looking at it is in your business even. You're saying, let me take a look. Okay, good for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think also your priorities, depending on whatever phase of life you're in, your priorities constantly have to be analyzed. And for me, I didn't have time. I wasn't 21 years old or 18 years old going to design school and then going and working at a firm and working my way up. This was a second career. I was in my early to mid 30s, mid 30s, honestly, mid to late 30s.
Wait, I was 28. I was 35. I was 55. Okay.
Yeah. I already said I knew that commercial from the 70s, so I've already given it away. So I just realized I don't have time, and I need a jump start. And I think I had heard of Julia Malloy from Lauren Leese's blog, and I don't know if you know Lauren Leese, but she's a wonderful designer. She also was kind of inspiring. I think she's about 10 years younger than I am, but I think she started blogging a little before I did, but I read her blog and we were blogging at the same time, and she followed me and I followed her, but she's taken off. She's already had a book published, and she's amazing, but she was so transparent about her process of starting her business. And I think she also did not go to design school. I'm not positive about that, but anyway, she was very transparent about it. And she talked about whatever she did, she would be very open about it on the blog. And I remember her talking about working with Julia Malloy, and I said, oh, I'm going to call Julia Malloy and just get this going. So I worked with her, and then got set up, hired an admin, and immediately rented an office space, which was great. I was a little scared to do that because I said, I don't know if we have the money coming in for that, but so glad I did. Okay. Absolutely worth it. We've since upgraded our space. Again, we've moved to a much larger space, and of course, I've hired more employees and all of that. But I think also working with Julia gave me the confidence to kind of just to sort of take on whatever opportunities were coming. And even though I had a good level of kind of entry-level clients coming in, it was a kitchen, a couple of bathrooms, maybe decorate a living room or something like that. I wasn't doing big whole house projects. And then I think about a year into the business, I had kind of my dream project land in my lap, and of course things that happened, like the Today Show thing, and then some other a little bit of attention here and there, and then I had this. I got a phone call to work with a client who I think found me from House, and that ended up being a multi-million dollar project. Whoa. And it was a whole house. And it was a 3-year project, and they just called me again last week, and they're starting on another project. Nice. And pulling the whole team back in, which is great. So and I almost said no to that project because I thought I wasn't ready. And I just had a moment of like, no, just do this. And I think that whole thing of constantly asking questions, and I hate being the person who doesn't know something, right, and I was working on this project. I worked with an amazing construction firm, very high end, and phenomenal architect, kind of works internationally and all of that. And I thought everything they said, I just wrote down. I just sat there in our meetings, and if there was one thing I didn't know what they were talking about, I just wrote it down and figured it out.
Interesting.
And I've always kept a notebook, or now it's a document, but online. But I've always kept a notebook of things that if something flies by and I don't know what I don't know the term, or I don't know the process, I write it down. And if I can't find it out in that moment, I go back and research it, and I keep it there so I can reference it, because you're not always using all of your information all the time.
Right.
Different projects require different amounts of knowledge, and so I go back to that document and read it.
So let me ask you something. So let's take us into that opportunity, because, it's one thing to say, I almost didn't do it, and then I decided the heck with it, I'm going to do it. Right. There's something else in between there. Like the in between is first in the hesitation. Okay, the hesitation is understood easily. It's a multi-million-dollar project. You're not sure if you're up and running and equipped to handle it. But what were the things that you asked yourself, and what were the answers that you came up with? I mean, or was it just the heck with it, I'll figure it out as I go? You don't sound like that to me. You don't sound like that's where you just went, yeah, okay, never mind, let's say yes. What did you do that you said, well, in order for me to do this project, and in order for me to, have an expectation of doing this successfully, I would have to what? Like what did you go through in that moment, Lane?
That is such a good question, and I wish I were as thoughtful as you're saying I sound like I am.
Well, you asked what P-traps are, but you didn't know how you were going to do it.
No. I mean, there was a thought process involved.
That's what I'm saying. I know there was. You just probably never realized it and thought maybe you didn't think of it. So that's what I'm trying to push you, because I think that happens to all interior designers at every level. It could be the interior designer that has only done decoration and is now asked to do the renovation of a bathroom. That's a big jump, like going from picking the pillows and the drapes to gutting a bathroom. So I think the process mentally is very similar, whether it's somebody who's done, like in your case, X amount of design projects and now it's a multi-million. But there has to be something like, did you take a stock inventory of your resources, of the vendors that you work with, of the people, like somebody thought, well, if I really get stuck, this is the person I'll ask. Like, how did you handle it?
So I think what I initially did was I started creating a not better, but a more well-rounded list of vendors. Mm-hmm. I knew that we were, for instance, going to be doing a smart home on this project.
Okay.
And we were going to have completely integrated systems and motorized window treatments and all of that. So I didn't do a lot of research, but I went to someone and I just started asking her. I said, this is the project. Would you like to work on it? And it's going to be big, but I need, some help. Okay. And she was initially into it. And then I think when she realized how big the project was, she said, you know what, I'm going to pass you on to someone else.
Okay.
And she passed me on to the sort of local Lutron specialists. Mm-hmm. And they were, I think it helps when it's a really big project like that, because your vendors are willing to work with you because they know it's a worthwhile project for them.
Right.
So everyone was incredibly generous, and I worked closely with this company, and they were very giving of information and would, provide me all the specifications, and I would do all my own research and learn how to do it. And then additionally, the contracting firm who managed the project and did all the work couldn't have been more lovely. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, is everyone who worked on the project was very generous and open, and we all shared with each other.
Well, I'm going to tell you, it sounds like to me, though, that you probably don't realize how much your take on it affected it. So here's what I'm going to say. I said, first of all, I think that the fact that you reach out in particular to a motorized window treatment specialist, and then they have to push you up the chain to somebody with more expertise. What I'm hearing, though, and you're saying, oh, and then by the way, the contractor was really good, but he was nice. That firm was a good firm. But here's what happens is you are coming to each of these people with their expertise, and you're saying, I have this project. I think it's going to be a great project. There's a lot of potential here for both of us. I need you to help me with it. I'd love for you to help me with it. I'd love for you to have my back with it. You know what I mean? And I think that's different. Sometimes people in every industry, but, you know, obviously we're talking to interior designers, you know, just tell the vendor that it's over your head. You know what I mean? I had that recently with a listener of the podcast who is in my local area and called out and had a whole house. And she was like, you know, I've never done a window treatment project of this level before, but would you come out and help me do it? And I'm like, heck yeah, I'll come out and help you do it. And we're out there and we're talking about it. And I'm like, what are you thinking for the here? And she's like, this is what I'm thinking, but I don't actually know if it's doable. And is it the best solution? What would you do? So she's not standing in there trying to pretend to me that she knows something she doesn't. And that's off-putting. And so I think maybe you experience all good trades because you're a good trade. Do you know what I'm saying? And you didn't realize that you're bringing that to the table. So you're bringing that out in them. And of course, there's always the bad apple that's never going to get along with anybody, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. Well, that's another thing. So I think when I first started my business, I was really, I guess, trepidatious about it because I didn't go to design school. Yes, I had all this experience and I felt like working in construction to a degree and I had been working on projects, but I don't know, it just felt like I had a postgraduate degree in music, you know, so it just felt very how can I start my business? I can't start a business. And so when I started working with Julia Malloy, the one thing that she said that I still hold on to was she said 90% of successful entrepreneurs have their consistent quality among all of them is a high EQ. Right.
Emotional intelligence. Yep.
Yeah. And I said, oh, I can do that. I've got that. She said, it doesn't matter. She said, you don't even have to actually be good at interior design.
It's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, she said, you can have a business and run a business and be successful if you are good with people.
And good with running your systems and your numbers. What I'm saying?
That came later for me. That was not my natural skill set. But I was like, okay, I can do that. And that was the thing that gave me the confidence to just go for it.
Right.
And so I feel like I know how to get along with people. I know how to talk to people. And I definitely have an investment in all of my projects, an emotional investment, but I'm not ego driven in that way. And I like working with people. So, and
your nature, I mean, I'm learning it in a half hour. Your nature is naturally curious. So that's a good quality. It's a good when you just are, how does that work? Instead of, you know what I mean? Just ignoring the process, just getting to solution. It's how does it work? And I understand it and yada, yada. And I think that I know that trades appreciate that. I know I appreciate it. You know, when you just don't stand there and say, make it happen. It's like, all right, sweetie, we have to do a little bit more in between that.
Yeah. And I feel uncomfortable when I don't have that information. So I feel like I'm a better designer. I'm better with clients if I can explain the process to them. I think that's a large part of our job too.
Yes.
Is explaining to them not only what the best design is, but why it is.
Right. Good point. So. Very good point. Karina Jones brought that up in her podcast, how she really likes to explain to the client why she chose something, how she went about choosing it, and then because then they can understand the vision as opposed to just this sofa, whatever, or this, cabinet here or whatever it might be. Okay. So now talk to us a little bit about running your business. So we know that there's value from having done this construction side first, in the beginning of your career and being very involved in it. Having done it that way and now having the experience these, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, of running a firm and doing big projects like you've just described, could you think about what do you think are the mistakes that are the typical things that do trip the designer up in working on a project that involves construction? Is there anything there that goes through your mind, Lane?
I think not being very thorough with your design plans can be a big problem. And I actually did learn this from working with another a construction firm, not the one I worked with early on, but a different one, having everyone in agreement on what the decision is for whatever piece it is, and then having a traceable, like this contractor would have everyone sign the wood sample of the floor. You know what I mean? And date it. So
I'm in love with that contractor right now.
And I think also with working with contractors, and I know you said earlier some contractors work better with designers than others, and some designers work better with contractors than others. But having as thorough of a plan as you can from the very beginning, giving them that not literal blueprint, but the blueprint for what they are going to be doing with as much detail as possible. So we draft permitting plans and all of that for the city. And then for pretty much every construction project, we put together a very thorough construction document, because I do not want there to be confusion on site if we can't be there. Now, we try to be on site as much as possible, but if we aren't, because as we all know, there are contractors who will just make a decision in the moment if they don't have it in front of them. And so I try very hard to make sure that they don't have to do that.
I like that advice, because even on something as just one layer of window treatments, let alone a whole construction project, that's one of my pet peeves in the day-to-day with, when I'm working with my direct clients, that happens the way I want it to happen. I'm going to ask you 9,000 questions and we're finally going to understand each other, what we're doing. But I find that is the design firms that are not normally as busy as they want to be or could be. It's because they are not getting specific on the beginning of the project. And what happens is, we have a saying at Window Works is, if you don't ask me the details in the beginning, then don't talk to me about the details after I install it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you didn't care where the rod went when I was measuring, don't tell me you don't like where the rod is now that I've installed it. And the thing is, I can't tell you how the number of times that happens. And that's, to me, when I work with a design team, that's their MO, and that design team is also not busy, then I'm saying they're dropping that ball on the beginning end of the details, not just with window treatments, but probably with every phase of the project. And so the project is not well run, and then therefore you're sacrificing your referrals. You're sacrificing referrals from the client. You're sacrificing referrals from the other vendors. And so I think that I love that what you said is, you're making sure that the details on the front end are as specific as you can possibly be. And you're doing it because, so if there's a question that arises in mid-construction and you're not there, you want them to do what you want them to do. But I'm telling you, it's also something that really, really ensures the success of an actual healthy firm. Because if you take that approach with every aspect, then the project itself is going to be better run.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, as we all know, one little change to one seemingly unimportant detail is actually a domino effect for the rest of the design.
It's the truth.
And there's nothing, I hate that.
Yes.
I can't stand it, because it changes everything and it changes my original intent. And so I really want to cut that off before it happens.
Yeah. And the thing is, I always say this all the time. I say it in real life and I say it on the show. I have compassion for the interior designer, the number of details that that cross your desk in relation to a full-on project. And even a full-on project that's just like a living room from empty to full. It doesn't even have to be a full-on construction project. The number of details are insane, quite frankly. But like I said, you can't wing it in the beginning and then stand there at the final and go, well, why this? And it's not how I wanted it. It's like, you never said how you wanted it.
Yeah, and it'll only happen once. I think if you go through that process and you miss something, you're never going to miss that thing again.
Yeah. And the thing is, there are things that happen in real time. So maybe you've told me that the crown molding is going to be 7 inches deep, and I've made my adjustment for the rod length and the draper length based on that. But then, the mill worker is there on the job, and now all of a sudden this level is that, and then all of a sudden you all decide to go with 3-inch crown molding, and then we walk in and your notes say that the drape is 2 inches lower than the crown, but I had 2 inches off a 7 and you have 2 inches now off a 3, and you're looking at me going, my drapes are wrong. I'm like, lady, the drapes are right. You never told me you changed the molding.
Yeah. And I think that's also another reason it helps to have a decent sense of construction and how things are measured, off finished floor instead of from the crown molding, things like that. I mean, that's going to help prevent a lot of these misunderstandings if everyone's working from the same terminology.
Right. That's a great point. It's a very great point. And so what have been some of your most memorable challenges that, like you said, you make a mistake once? And I'm the same way. I've said that 1,000 times in our business. Well, that really stinks, but I won't do that a second time because it's so painful, money-wise, embarrassment-wise, timeline-wise. Anything to stick out in your mind that you could, think of as a good learning example for designers listening?
Well, we caught this one luckily, but it could have been bad. And I knew this one, and it just didn't get filtered down to my staff, or it wasn't reinforced enough. But on measuring, especially for cabinetry, starting at the center line for the plumbing, I mean, that's really specific, but that will be a major problem if you don't do it that way.
Okay.
And we almost got, that was a bad one. So we almost,
and that's an expensive mistake.
And it was cabinet install day, and the cabinet guys were there installing it, and all of a sudden it was 6 inches off. And luckily we were able to solve it, and I don't think the client even knew, but that's a
hairy, probably half hour, however long it took to round around that.
Yeah. And my designer's never going to do that again. She's never going to miss that one again. But that was a hard one, but solved. Luckily, it was fine, and we solved it, and it looks great.
And that's where it's important that everybody is on the same page. That all of your team members, your cabinet guy, your plumber, your granite guy, whatever it is, that everybody's like happy to try and make this work, right?
Right, that's true. And I think also you reach a certain level and you have to start delegating. And I 99% of the time, and I'm incredibly confident in my team and who I'm delegating to. We all make mistakes, it happens every once in a while. But I think because the buck stops with me in my business, I've never gone to a client and been like, oh, well, the contractor messed this up, or, the plumber, the tiler didn't quite do this. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is that this is the plan and I'm overseeing it. And if it's not the way I said it was going to be, we're going to make it the way I said it was going to be.
Good
so I have had to go in and pay money sometimes to fix something, because project a year ago, we had a wallpaper installer just kind of totally screw up the wallpaper, and I had to pay to order the wallpaper again and pay another installer to come and fix the problem. But I'm not going to say, sorry, the wallpaper installer didn't do it right to the client. That's not their problem.
That's awesome. I have to tell you, because you know darn well that the wallpaper guy screwed it up. But if he's not honorable and he walks away, it is your responsibility. I have to tell you, I never leave my designers responsible, especially if it's my mistake. That's for sure. But I've watched other trades walk away from a designer. And then I have to say, I'm sorry to say, I've watched designers not pick that bill up and watch them, in that case with the wallpaper or something else, just look at the client and be like, well, I don't know what to tell you if the wallpaper guy. And I just like stand there and I'm like, this is your job. Like, this is your project. That's like, what are you doing?
I couldn't. Yeah. I think for us, that's really important, because I can't walk away from a project feeling like, oh, I could have done a little bit more to make this right for them. I need to know that I've done everything that I think is responsible to make it the way it's supposed to be and make it be what I said it was going to be. And if at the end they're still unhappy with something, I at least feel good. But that hasn't ever happened, honestly. I can't. Right. Yeah, but if it were to happen, then I could sort of walk away saying, well, this isn't me. This isn't my thing. This was theirs.
Well, and the thing is, we often say, and my husband and I say to each other, nobody wants to have a problem. Nobody wants to be knee deep into something that went wrong. But the reality is that we have long ago recognized that those things that go wrong are sometimes our best opportunities to create a lifelong loyal customer. Because what happens is when you fully own a mistake. So in my case, here's the people that could make mistakes. It could be me measuring, it could be my workroom fabricating, it could be my installer installing, okay, let alone, the fabric coming wrong or whatever, and then add to it all the other things that could happen. But those are the three main places that our projects can break down. And when something breaks down, it doesn't do no good for me to stand there and say, well, I didn't know, and you didn't this, and I think you changed the floor and you didn't tell me, whatever it is, right? Or my workroom this, and it wasn't my fault, like you said, to stand there and throw it off on somebody else. Because what we find is, like in that case, when you purchase the wallpaper and pay to have it installed again, you're saying that to your client. I have your back. I take this seriously. You matter to me. You're important to me. Now, one thing I always do is I make sure, especially in that situation when they know I've specified it right, in your case, if they knew you specified it right, this and that and everything, but he dropped the ball. It's not about throwing them under the bus, but it's like, I'm going to pick the ball up. You see me here? Mm-hmm. I'm picking it up for you. I make sure that they know that, okay? But that's the point. It's an opportunity instead of at every single Saturday night when they're out to dinner with their friends saying, and that wallpaper is the worst, and it's not the way it's supposed to be, and the seams aren't even, and the designer walked away the wall. Instead, they're like, and do you know what my designer did? She paid for more paper. And then that's how you grow your business. And I know it for a fact because that's how we've grown our business.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I think also, I love the clients I work with for the most part, but I also love every design we do. And I care very much about how, those are like the babies, so I care very much how that wallpaper looked because I care about that vision. Mm-hmm. So if they installed the wallpaper, it wasn't quite right, and I was okay with that, then I don't really feel like I have any business coming up with designs because that's just, I can't not care about that whole creative process and that vision coming to life. Right. And if it's not the way I wanted it, then that's kind of like, what's the greater point of doing it?
And that's what you're saying. It's very important to you. You take it seriously. You've created a vision. You want to see that vision. If you didn't care, you wouldn't have created that vision.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Exactly right. Okay. No, but I think that customer service, to me, that falls into the category of customer service. It's absolutely critical to growing your business. And we certainly don't wake up in the morning and, anticipate creating problems or, looking for problems. But we always, our frame of mind is, well, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity, and how are we going to handle it? And usually at the end of it, almost always, that's your loyal customer,
right?
Because you guys do have a lot less contacts with you have fewer contacts with fewer people, right? I might contract with 100 people in a month. You might contract with 20 people in a year, right? But if I do 98 projects a month, absolutely perfect, there's nothing remarkable about them because they went perfect, right? Yeah. That customer could have literally, enter the marketplace for window treatments in 3 years ago. What company do we use? I'm trying to remember. Whereas if there's a fiasco and we, treat them with so much respect and we clean up the problem and we make sure that it's handled, they don't forget who you are.
Yeah.
So it costs you money. I've had many projects over these 30 plus years where, at the end of the day, the project cost me more than I collected in monies. But that's like putting an ad in the newspaper as far as I'm concerned. That was advertising.
That's true. Yeah. I think another thing that goes along those lines that when I was first starting my business, I had a friend whose mom was a retired interior designer, and she was visiting town, and I just had her over for coffee. I just wanted to talk to her. And one thing that she said that really stuck with me was collect good vendors and trades and then take really good care of them. And so we try really hard to do that.
What ways do you do? What kinds of things? Give people some suggestions.
I think, first of all, just having good relationships, just personable relationships with them. But then also I try, and if I'm calling one of our vendors for maybe a consult on a project and that we end up not moving forward with them, I pay them for their time.
Oh, wow.
And I also try and protect them in another way, which is that I don't share them unless it's a really, I mean, that's kind of our lifeblood as interior designers, are our trades and vendors that we've acquired, and we've worked with them, we've put time into maintaining these relationships, and I don't just pass them out willy-nilly to other people.
So tell me a little bit about that, though, when you were just saying how you don't just share your trades willy-nilly. I recently, literally just this week that we're recording anyway, had an email from Lindsay who asked about that specifically, about in regard to sharing your trade sources, how do you not do it? And then the other part of her question, which is a little bit different, but it'd be interesting to get your take on it. She said that when you go to publish your photographs, she goes, on one hand, you want to credit your sources. On the other hand, you don't want to, like you just said, you just don't want to put your sources out there. So she was asking how designers handle that.
Well, and I've read different things from other designers too. If it's a vendor that's kind of somewhat recognizable within the industry and people are going to know that product, I think it's okay. But I think also you protect your clients and their projects by not naming everything, because they want their project to be special and unique. And if you're telling everyone everywhere that everything came from, then anyone can go recreate that, and then that's not maintaining that client's specialness of their project. That's
funny, because I'm going to tell you what. Here's her three things. Here's what you just hit it. First, she says, how do you handle the product publicity versus product privacy issue when trying to grow your brand? Then she said, am I giving away my secrets by sharing my sources? Okay. And then she says, she goes into parentheses, she says, after all, that's what people are paying me for, right? Then she said, am I failing my client and the uniqueness of their project by sharing my sources with the general public? Okay. So those are the three things she just emailed me this week to ask me, right? How do designers handle this? So that's so funny that you said that you were like, well, and there's that part of it too. So
yeah, I think it's true.
There's no clear answer for Lindsay out there. It's just, you have to do a fine balance of trying to put, because we're here. Look, we'll have five podcasts in a row. Get all your stuff photographed and put it on Instagram and put it on Facebook. And then we're like, yeah, but
right.
Don't tell everybody.
I think you also have to feel it out with each client. Okay. I think each client is a little bit different. Some clients can't wait to have their project photographed and publicized and put out there for the world to see. And some clients never want to have like their name associated with it or anything, or, they're more private. So I think it really depends on the client. I do think it's important to photograph as much as you can and get it out, even if you're not referencing specifics about the project.
Okay. And so I have had designers on the program tell me that, and it's mostly big firms, right? But say that's part of our contract. This will be photographed, signed on the dotted line right now. We're not doing it if it's not going to be photographed. So it sounds like you're not a flat hard line on it, but do you have the conversation at the onset of the project about their feelings about being photographed, and if their names are shared publicly, if that's, or they're okay with photographs but no names, or they're not okay with, how do you handle that, Lane?
We do have that photographs will be taken, put in the contract, but if a client said to me, I really don't want this project photographed at all, to be honest, I would still push to have, at least certain parts of the project photographed in a way that I could still get some use from it, without making them uncomfortable. But as far as names attached, that is totally up to the client.
Right.
I would never say, I'm sorry, we have to publish this and put your name with it.
Right. And I don't think, if I recall, any of the firms that, have it as this, I think the same thing, because a lot of them are probably doing celebrities and stuff, and of course their names aren't going to go in. But so what you're saying is you would push back a little bit. You would try. You would say, well, I'm going to really look to get some kind of photographs. And then what do you give a little caveat and say, I'll share them with you, let you look at them before I use them for my portfolio so they can see maybe it's not their front door with their number on it.
Right. And maybe it's vignettes, and maybe it's just a view into this or a close-up of some tile or something like that. But yes.
So it's not so recognizable.
Because, I mean, our photographs are practically our currency in interior design. Yeah. So you really... If I knew going into a project I wasn't going to get to take pictures or use any pictures from it, it would be hard.
Yeah, you're actually saying to younger designers listening that you might reconsider the project depending on the other value that the project could give to you. So if it right. Mm-hmm. So it's like that other statement that you used in the beginning. It's not just dollars, the valuation, but it's the whole balance on the positives and the things that might happen from the project.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that some of these little nudgy details like this are the push points that designers that haven't been through it yet really struggle with. Because I guess what it is I think a lot of times if you're doing a presentation, say Lane McNab was doing a presentation and she stands up there on the design center and floor and she says, oh, yes. And I always discuss with my clients that we're going to, photograph at the end. If there's no probing in further, somebody listening just goes, well, I just have to tell everybody it's going to get photographed. But then we find out, like, okay, you are going to get pushback sometimes, and this is what I do. I always push back at least once or twice more and really try and, like you said, at least get vignettes or something.
Yeah, and that's also kind of speaks to a larger philosophy that I have that I actually learned from a client who is a CEO, and she is just such a boss. But it's that if someone tells you no, just keep going. Like, don't just ask again.
They can say no 20 times. It's okay.
There is always something more someone can do. There's always a better answer out there. So I definitely use that, and I kind of gently and very politely, but I kind of keep pushing. I don't just go, oh, okay. Right. I keep trying.
I like that. I like that because the truth is sometimes people just have a knee-jerk reaction to no on something like photograph. Like it automatically feels personal. Other than the client, like you said, it's just like, put it in every newspaper on the planet. I want to be famous.
Right.
But
I think it even speaks to the larger business of interior design, which is we've all worked with trades who just say no because it's something they've never done before, or it's something that feels, or maybe it's just too much time and they don't want to do it, whatever. So I mean, I feel like if I stopped every time someone told me no, I mean, I might as well just quit. Like there's no, I feel like you just have to always say, but wait, what if you just think about doing it like this and say, but it could be possible if you just tried this, and I think you just don't take your first no for sure.
I agree. I've said it on the show before. One of the single most creative, talented interior designers I've ever had the pleasure of working with is Charles Pavarini. He's in Manhattan. His brain, I would only even, if we ever had a science experiment and looked inside his brain, it doesn't look like the rest of ours. It just doesn't. The man is so insanely creative. And if I can't tell you the number of times that he said, oh, come on, Luann, let's go measure this project, yada, yada. And he starts talking, and he starts describing it. And I'm just like with my eyes glazing over going, what? How am I going to make it do this, Yeah. But he also was a couture tailor, tailor. I always have trouble with that word, couture tailor. And so, and he comes from the theater, just like yourself. He comes from a theater background. And so I'm telling you, the skill set of this man is ridiculous. And the number of window treatments that we have installed that are the most fabulous, amazing things that at first thing I was like, that's not going to work. So I agree. You do, no matter what it is, whether it's your client, it's your vendor, you just don't take the first no, ask again, collaborate. How about this? And of course, I'm frankly at the point where I've been schooled enough times by talented people like him that I usually will go, I have no idea how I would make that happen, but do you have an idea? Because then maybe we can get then maybe the light bulb goes off in me, and then all of a sudden
great.
we're off to the races, And
That's
if not,
great.
I'd make Billy figure it out, because Billy always figures it out.
That's right. If I get to a point where I can't do it, I just pass it on.
That's it. I just say, well, it sounds like it's going to be fabulous. Let's have Billy figure out how he's going to do it.
Well, I think that's important too, is to be collaborative and not just be a designer who says, I want it like this, and then pass it off and never, just leave it to be someone else's problem. I think being there, trying to figure it out, if it's something that is not usually done or hasn't been done before or is not familiar, just be there and be available and be open and say, okay, let's figure it out. And maybe even come up with something that you think is a good way of doing it. And then have that, we do a lot of drawings. So have a drawing, say like, I think if we tried this bracket and we put it here and we, put it at this height, and just have that be like a first pass, and then have the expert chime in on that.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, because a lot of times it does come through the back and forth. I like, just because, look, I'm doing it, since the dawn of time, but it doesn't mean I know everything. I'm the first one to tell you I don't, and I'm very happy to learn something new, but it's usually you have to have some thought, some logical way that you're like, what if this? And then I'd be like, okay, now all of a sudden together we're figuring it out. And your advice is great, whether it's the client or it's your window treatment person or your kitchen cabinet person or whoever it is. Just keep pushing, and then, you'll probably figure something out. And if you don't, you'll know it's not because that you didn't try. You'll know because it's truly not possible.
Right.
So.
The answer may still be no at the end, but at least you dug in and learned a lot.
Exactly. So one thing that you shared with me just in a passing on our off-air conversation that I wanted to bring into the conversation before I let you go is that you are outsourcing. Now, you said you're outsourcing your accounting and your expediting. Of course, I completely understand outsourcing accounting. I had never heard, other than a big commercial firm, outsource expediting. Tell us a little bit about that process, because you're yourself and 3 employees, right, Lane?
Right.
Yes. So that's not like you're 25 people there and you're outsourcing. I think most design firms that are a 4-man team are probably doing their expediting in-house. I don't think I've come across anybody with a team of that size that outsources it. Tell us about what they do for you and why it works for you and how it works as far as keeping track of what they're doing.
Well, I think it works because our accounting and expediting firm are one and the same.
Okay.
So our accounting firm, I think fairly recently, within the last few years, opened up an expediting arm. So they're already in our software and kind of knowing the ins and outs of our ordering as it is. And so now we pay them a flat fee per order, and they place the orders and manage them and give us a weekly report about the status of those orders. And it takes a lot of time off of my designers and my team.
So now let me ask you something. I understand the technical of doing that, but it must be effective. But my brain goes, if somebody ever said to me, oh yeah, give me all your expediting, I'll do it. I'm going to think to myself, how many times at the end of the week am I going to ask you for a status? And you're going to be like, yeah, I didn't quite order that yet. Like how they must have their game face every day.
That's true. And we are kind of annoying to them, I'm sure, because it was hard. It took us several months to really believe this was going to work.
Yes.
Of working with them before we're like, but really, this is really going to be okay. Like, you're going to do this. And it does. Now we do check in and we do ask questions, and they do give us the weekly reports, which is very helpful. So we know as soon as something's been ordered, and they order it right away. They also have documents where they put notes in it if they've been given an update, or if they've found out something is back ordered, or anything like that, anything to do with the order. We have really specific notes, and a lot of that is because I think they're fine-tuning their process with it, but we've also pushed for that because I hate not knowing something. So if a client is asking me a question, I need to be able to answer it. Mm-hmm. And if something is back ordered, I need to know why. So all of that is, accessible through this document. And it's worked really well. We do still order some things if it's a local vendor that we've worked with, or I don't know, things like that. But but they do most of our ordering.
That's amazing. So just so that I clearly understand it, let's take an example. Let's say you're designing a living room, and let's say you have a sofa and 2 chairs and a cocktail table from, I don't know, let's say curatedcraft.com.
Right.
Just maybe you came from there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you have an area rug from there too, and maybe a lamp. I don't, call me crazy.
One-stop shopping.
That's it. But then, so you have a half a dozen items from Kravit. You have a half a dozen items from Curry and Company. You have whatever. You're saying that you create an order sheet that all of the things that your client has agreed to, probably the same document that they're giving the deposits and so forth off of, the payments off of, and then you just give that to them, and then they're placing the orders with your accounts and so forth. They're not buying it, you're buying it, but they're like ordering the sofas, and they're following up. Well, not at Kravit, it's probably not back order because they have that guaranteed in stock, but I'm just saying, they're like doing all of that kind of ordering for you, like down to that level of the area rugs, the lighting, the accessories. Or are we talking about big cabinets and slabs of marble? Like, what are we talking about?
No, they do all of that level. So we would go in and create all of the details. Say we've got a COM, a chair with a COM. Maybe it has fabric from 2 different places.
Right.
We create all of the details within the proposal, which is phase 1 of we use Studio Webware. Okay. So phase 1 of that is the proposal phase. We create all the details within the vendor field, and then that would be one item with a couple of components. And then once that first phase gets switched to the second phase, which is a purchase order, then it goes into purchase order mode, and all of the details are already in, and then our expediter gets all of those details, and we'll take, let's say we're ordering 10 fabrics for this room from Kravit, and but they're going on all different kinds of pieces.
Sure.
Well, it would be one purchase order with all the items for Kravit, and that would get placed.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I know. So that sounds a little more magical than in practice it really is. I mean, I get nervous, I get stressed out, and I'm like, okay, we need to check and make sure this fabric went to the right place. And, and a lot of times we're sending it out to get treated for, to get backed before it goes to the upholsterer. So there are a lot of moving parts in there that we stay on top of, but we're not having to spend 2 hours a day tracking all of this down and chasing it. We can look, and if there's a piece of information that's not in the document, then we can call and say, okay, what's going on with this? I don't see an update here.
Well, what I like about it is it puts an extreme onus on you and your team to have that first round, that round, that I shouldn't say first, but the final round of selections that have that document so painfully accurate. Because you're turning it over to somebody else. Like, whereas if it's in-house, your goal is to make it painfully accurate, but, maybe it's not because you're not as worried about somebody outside that is not in the design field, that is not part of this project, that doesn't remember that you changed the blue chair to orange. You know what I mean? Like a designer is looking at a purchase order. Like, I can't tell you the number of times I have purchase orders that the fabrics have been changed and nobody changes the purchase order when they send it to me. Every day of the week, I get a purchase order from an interior designer that has the wrong fabric on it. Honest to God. And so what happens is I've been on the job with the measure, and I'm like, wait, did they change the fabric back or what? And so then we call and we ask. But if that was just sent out to an expediter, it's like, so what I'm saying is every designer's business would be better served to make sure that every single thing is actually been checked and double checked before it goes to order. And because you're sending it out to a third party, a second party, it has to be. That's awesome. I love that.
And I think, honestly, I didn't even know this about myself until I had this interview, but I think what I'm learning is that I like things done right from the very beginning. And so I would back it up even one more level and say, I don't even like presenting to a client until I have all of that in the proposal itself. So until I have all of that information at the ready to go, before it even gets signed off on by the client, because I don't want to say like, well, we still need one fabric for this piece and I will figure it out later. I want it all right there so that once the check is written and
there's no loose ends, no flying.
We know from the beginning what's going to happen.
Right.
We know we can project out for 3 months because I've made all those decisions from day one.
Very good. That's good. That's great organization. Like, look, every company benefits from that. There's no question. That's awesome. I think that's funny. I said that to you somewhere in the beginning of the conversation. When I asked you about taking on the multi-million-dollar project, you had to have criteria. You're like, I don't know that I did. I'm like, no, you did. I got that in 10 minutes of that, what you were like.
Yeah.
So, people call it therapy or like a podcast appearance, one or the other.
Yeah, a little of both.
So, no, that's awesome, Lane. I think it's terrific what you're doing. I said, and I can just, like I said, I can hear that you're organized. I can hear that you're curious and that you ask questions and that it's important to you that you understand all components of the process. And I think that contributes a lot to the success of your projects. And I'm sure it carries through to the 3 people that work for you. And any firm that can outsource all the expediting to a non-interior design firm is I mean, look, I know that, like I said, I know that the big commercial firms do it because, of course, you're going to buy 9,000 yards of carpet and 50 million pounds of tile. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That I can see, but inherent in that is built-in room for error too. Let's be serious on a project that size, but on a project, because I just know. I mean, look, even our at Window Works, I know the things that because I'm the one doing the order all the way through. I'm like, oh, okay, we decided to put trim on that, So I admire you because that takes a certain level of locking it down in order to be that specific.
I think also I know that I'm not going to remember things, and we have to have everything written down from the very beginning. And that's, I think, having really detailed notes that can be referenced so I can say, oh, this is what was decided and this is what happened next and this is what happened next is the only way we can get through that. Yeah. So, I mean, we write everything down.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Good for you. Good. I really enjoy meeting you. I think that I'm glad that Lindsay's question specifically came up 2 days after she emailed me. I haven't even had a chance to email her back yet to say I got your questions.
Well, that was really good timing.
Yes, it was.
I just want to say one more thing because I talked a little bit about the consultants that I worked with, Julia Malloy. I also just want to say I worked with Kim Cutable.
She was a guest too.
Oh, was she? I haven't even heard hers yet.
Yes, okay, she's way back like in September, I think.
Oh, great. Yes. Well, she was immensely helpful too. And I highly recommend anyone who's sort of looking for up-leveling to work with her. She was great.
Yes. Leslie Myrick was on the show early last spring, and she mentioned Kim Cutable and how helpful she was. So then I was like, well, okay, now I have to have Kim. Just like I said, okay, now I really have to have Julia.
So great.
Yes. So Kim is terrific. She has her book came out.
I know. So good.
Is it interior design and branding? I don't remember the title exactly. I can picture it. It's a beautiful hardcover book with, white. Gold.
With the gold and and interior brand, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's something like that, right?
Something like that, yeah.
But yes, she's a smart lady. So, well, I have to tell you, thank you so much, Lane, for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with all of your colleagues. I think it was very helpful, and we appreciate it very much.
My pleasure, Luann. Thank you so much.
I'm so proud to tell you that our podcast is sponsored by Cravat Inc., featuring CuratedCravat.com. You know, because I've told you a million times, that I've been a Cravat customer since the early 1980s. And the truth is, I can't say enough great things about Cravat Inc., except to tell you that now there's CuratedCravat.com. At CuratedCravat.com, they work so hard to source high-quality items for you and for your clients. And they really do make it very easy to find that unique piece to complete your interior design project. Do you know what a couple of my favorite parts are? First, it's trade only. That's right, they have your back at Cravat Inc. Second, they have no minimums. Isn't that awesome? And third, the ordering process is a snap. Design, click, delivered. It's so easy. You need to visit CuratedCravat.com today and be sure to use your discount code CKPodcast. You get to use that code for one order and you will get 10% off that entire order. CK Podcast at CuratedCravat.com. Well, that was fun. It was nice getting to know Lane. And of course, I know I say that about everyone, but everyone is fun. I like them all. I like all you people. What I love is there's always something new, something interesting, something that we can apply to what we're doing, right? And so for Lane, she specifically was, for me, the big thing that I heard was the details about is exactly as I said. If you have your paperwork in such clear order that you can turn it over to an outside party to execute all of the purchasing, that's some lockdown procedures. So I don't even know. I absolutely have to be truthful here. I don't think I could do that at this point, but I think I could strive for that. I think that is an interesting goal to sort of look for, to have that much detail and that much clarity and that much of your entire process so clean. So, I mean, hats off to them. If others of you are doing that, I would be really interested to know. So anyway, so I do appreciate her coming on so much and sharing that with us. And I think it's interesting that we have the repeat of the coaches happening. Of course, there's been many coaches that helped us on the show over the last year, including Kim Cutable. And of course, Krista Cooper, who is working with Lane now. She's her PR firm. And of course, I think I'm going to have to reach out to this other coach, right? Julia Malloy. So anyway, I really do hope that you picked up some valuable information in listening to Lane today. And I would love to just remind you that we're coming very close to Las Vegas market. And I keep saying the same thing over again in these couple of weeks leading up to it, because I know not everybody is listening in real time, and you sometimes move around and pick up an interview and don't. So the big news so far is that on Monday, the 31st, I'm going to be at the Noir showroom with Designer Inc., and we're going to be playing a game called Name That Vendor, and I'm going to be your game show host for that event. And so it's audience participation, and Designer Inc. has put together a fabulous event with Noir and a ton of questions, and we're going to basically, like name that tune, except I'm not going to sing. You do not want to hear me sing, I'm just saying. But, so that should be lots of fun, and that is going to be at 4:00 on Monday the 31st at Noir. Then Tuesday, the big event at Kravit with Kravit Inc. in my Doma studio. And the designer rock star herself, Kelly Ellis. We're doing Design Uncorked. And that's basically going to be pretty much like a live podcast. So I'm going to speak to Kelly about how do you grow your interior design business from firm to empire. Okay, because, who else but Kelly to teach us how to do that? And of course, I'll be asking her all the kinds of questions that you want to know. And of course, there will be time for Q&A with Kelly and myself, and time at both events for meet and greet. So please stop on by to one of these events. Other than that, I'm not quite sure what else we're cooking up, but those are the two things for certain that I'll be at. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's show. I do want to thank you for the recent iTunes reviews that have come in. Again, if you are still sitting out there and you have not done these three things, these are the three things that I want to know that you've done. I want to know if you've left a rate and review in iTunes, and if you haven't, I'd love it if you did. I want to know if you have even opened up curatedkravit.com. Okay. Have you gone to the website, just opened it up, just looked at it, just saw what it is? Are you out there with, I'm finding that people have one of two misconceptions, and I think it's pretty hysterical, because some people have a misconception that it's too expensive, and then other people have a misconception that it's not high-end enough. And the thing is, they're both completely wrong misconceptions, because I have seen accessories on there for $100, and I've seen rugs on there for $25,000. So the truth is, it's both of those things. It's expensive and it's reasonable. It's all in one. So please take a moment to go. I also want to know if you've ever signed up for your trial for my Doma studio. Okay, so Sarah has some sort of offer over there if you put the podcast code in, just like, by the way, at curatedkravit.com, you have the podcast code CKPodcast for 10% off your first and for one purchase. But, have you tried and gone over to mydomastudio.com / a well-designed business, and taking a look at what's happening over there. One of the recurring themes that we are hearing is about having your systems. Now, Lane didn't happen to use My Doma Studio, but she uses a platform similar. And the value in her conversation is that she first is entering all of her projects into this software platform. This helps her organize her project and export it out to that expediter. So whether you use whatever she uses or you use My Doma Studio, I'm just saying you should be using something to help you get yourself organized. All righty, please send your questions to questions@windowworksnj.com and give me a day or two on those. It's not an email that I check every day. It might be a couple of days, but if you've sent me a question, know that Adriana has printed it for me and I will get to you. Okay? Thank you so much for joining us today. Have an excellent day. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about WindowWorks at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.